Welcome to the 2-Month Review, the weekly podcast brought to you by Open Letter and 3%, in which we take one giant, complicated book, break it down bit by bit, section by section, talk about it, analyze it, have fun, make jokes, make fun of Ohio. I don't know, do things. I'm Chad Post from Open Letter Books, joined as always by Brian Wood, author of Joytime Killbox.
Hey, Chad, great to be here. How you been? How was the break?
Yeah.
I'm
Okay. I'm here.
Batting 212.
Batting 212 guy. I'm worth 0.5 wins above replacement. I am just above average.
I noticed you gave us a book this season. We have a book that has some baseball references in it. So this is why
references. there is not only baseball references, but I automatically flip to the scorecard that is in the middle of the book too. So you had a whole scorecard in which, not to spoil anything, but the game that is on the scorecard is called after the third inning because of drunken condition of both teams. So that seems very in keeping with not only Gilbert Sorrentino Mulligan Stew, which is the book we're reading this season, which we'll talk about in a second, but also like the general vibe of the 2-month review.
All right. Well, I realize it's impossible to pick a favorite line with the way this book is. Oh but I'll just sprinkle ones throughout the conversation. Can we start with, if God is for us, who can be against us? The New York Yankees.
It's one of my favorite bets. So goddamn good. So the book we're reading this season, just for anyone listening and or watching, is Mulligan Stew by Gilbert Sorrentino. There's a new Delkey Archive Essentials edition that just came out. There's the older version, which Brian has for the time being, which looks like it was made in MS Paint and possibly was.
Hell yeah.
And I have things to say about that cover. We could actually start with the cover, but this is Gilbert Sorrentino's one of his masterpieces. He is a brilliant writer. I was going to pull up like his Wikipedia and go through his whole like kind of life history, but I don't know that we really need to, because over the course of this season, I think we'll get to talk about a variety of his books, because this book sort of encompasses a lot of different approaches in his fiction and in fiction overall, which will be interesting. Like, for instance, our author in here, Antony Lamont, refers to his first book as Fretwork, which is similar to Steelwork by Gilbert Sorrentino, which was one of his earlier books. So there are like resonances. But this book, Mulligan Stew, was first published in, I actually don't remember, 1979, right?
79.
So it's an older book, obviously. I would argue that it is the greatest Irish novel ever written, and it is more of the Joycean side of Sorrentino. Like, Sorrentino does have books that are more Beckettian in a lot of ways, and like very spare and a less like exuberant. But this book, Mulligan Stew, is like a wild fucking ride. So Brian, this is your first Sorrentino encounter and your first Mulligan Stew encounter, and you've read the first like 50-60 pages. What is your take so far?
Absolutely brilliant. Like it would feel cutting edge and like right on the cusp of like, yeah, I know like postmodernism is kind of like dying out, but like this is just crushing it, and it's 1979. Like, if it was written in 99, I would have said like brilliant, what a great idea. If it was written in 2009, say brilliant, what a cool idea. Like, and it was in 79. It's wild how cool this is.
So to set it up, and then we can kind of walk through some parts. So the setup that we've got so far is that there's a writer named Antony Lamont who is trying to write a new novel. He's written a couple experimental novels, one called Fretwork, one called like Rayon Nylon, maybe. I forget what it's called. It's in
Violet.
Rayon Violet, yeah. And I think one other thing that gets referenced.
They're all like these crappy hard-boiled detective names.
And they're
all awful.
And the writing is so terrible. Like, he quotes it. It is so terrible. But he's working on a new book that is currently at the beginning of this called Guinea Red, in which he wants to reinvent the kind of postmodern mystery, a la maybe like a Rogue Grier, in that vein of like a Nouveau Roman, whatever. But instead, like, what he writes is a pile of shit, and we get mini versions of it. We get the first chapter right away. The book doesn't start with the first chapter, but it sort of does. And we get the first chapter of Guinea Red, and it's the narrator is narrating how his friend Ned Beaumont, who he decides to only refer to as Ned Beaumont the entire time. He's like, Ned Beaumont is dead, and he's like, I think I killed him. I called the cops. I don't remember. I don't know what's going on. You know, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. And then Anthony Lamont rewrites that chapter, and it's still shitty. And in the middle, he's in communication via letters with a professor, Professor Roach, which is a fun name, who supposedly wants to teach one of his books in his class. And so he's asking him for some help. And our author, Anthony Lamont, is like just overjoyed to share every single thought he's ever had about everything that he's ever done.
It's the greatest curriculum vitae I've ever read. Well, my favorite color is blue. I don't like blue. I like.
And then we get the nice twist that Halpern, that's one of the characters in the book, the main character of the book, who maybe killed Ned Beaumont, is writing a journal because he as a character exists and had been in Joyce's Ulysses as a gardener. Just a toss off, like true footnote.
I've never been a main character. This is awful.
This sucks. This guy is making me say Ned Beaumont over and over and over again.
Why do we live here? Gosh, I wish it was sunny.
So we'll get into it, but I'm get into it more. But I do love that, like, the premise of the Halpern parts are that fiction is what is written. What is written is there. This is like an old school. When John O'Brien, the founder and publisher of Dalek Archive for many years, he when he would talk about Gill, his friend Gill, and they were close, and Sorrentino helped with the start of the Review of Contemporary Fiction and was one of like the true North Stars in John O'Brien's like literary reading and ideas about publishing and about what books would be published. When you talk about Sorrentino, we frequently talk about how he didn't have any sense of metaphor or of like that, like what's on the page is on the page. That's it. Like that is what fiction is. And so when you get to the character, when Halpern's like a character talking, all that exists for him within this book is what's been written so far. So the constant references to like, it's dark and stormy over the lake. It's a black, dark lake. He's like, it's black outside of one window, the one window that exists in the house. And then everything else is either not there or is totally different but our author, Antony Lamont, has not described any of it, so it doesn't exist yet.
So two things real quick. Like if we're going to do cinematic references, it kind of reminds me if Toy Story and adaptation had a baby. Oh
my God. Right? I've never seen Toy Story.
That's okay. It's about toys that come alive when no one's around.
I did see a joke though, where like if one of them died, the kid would never know. He'd still be just playing with a corpse.
Yeah, that's true. But more so than that, when you're talking about how a book is made, let's not skip those letters at the beginning of this before it even begins, right?
Yes. So
what is your take on that? Being somebody that you get to see how the sausage is made, I mean, it's like it's already like a novel within a novel with characters within the novel, but then he wants to get more meta, by having the letters at the beginning be all made up and fake and funny and hilarious also.
Right, and kind of made up and fake. And and we say the meta in that there's also the intertextuality, which we should loop back to, that Antony Lamont is a character from At Some Two Birds by Flann O'Brien. So a lot of these are references. And then Daisy Buchanan is Great Gatsby character. So like we have like these other things. And some of the other people who are referenced, Trellis is from At Some Two Birds. Demont Trellis, who will become a larger figure as the book goes on. They're all like these characters that existed elsewhere. But yeah, the book,
and they all wish they could be in those original works, not in this one.
Not in this one at all. Well, we'll see. But the book is obviously like disrupting the idea of fiction as being an artifice, of believing in it. And it does that from the very jump by opening, instead of on a typical book, when you open the front cover, there'll be a praise for the book or praise for the author page. And instead of praise for anything, we get a series of rejection letters to Sorrentino that become increasingly insane.
If you'll humor me, I love hearing work out loud. So here's the cover. You open it up, and like right away is this letter. I'm going to read the first letter in completion, and I just kind of want your thoughts. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Okay.
Do it.
Dear Gil, I'm afraid that I simply can't hold on to the manuscript of Mulligan Stew any longer, much as I'd like to. And so I'm returning it to Marv. I'm assuming Marv is the literary agent.
Okay.
I can't tell you how much I admire the book. It seems to me superb. As a matter of fact, it is one of the most remarkably conceived and executed novels it has ever been my pleasure to read in manuscript. And I have been in this frustrating and thankless game for 14 years now. However, the sheer cost of doing your book is insurmountable for a small, still struggling house like this one. To be frank with you, I must show a profit to the parent company before I can even consider getting behind a project like yours. Don't misunderstand me. I will not publish schlock so as to make the to make the money that might justify doing Mulligan Stew or books like it. But I feel that the books on the fall list are not only good, but have definite market appeal. Of the 6 books on our fall list, 3 are really exciting, and I'm quite proud of it. One already on the shelves is, it seems to be, a necessary addition to, quote, Beatle lore, the complete Beatle wardrobe book. The other 2, the films of Roy Rogers and a zany, wonderful novel about life in California, Screwing and Sausalito, are risky, but have received great word of mouth publicity. So, Gil, if things go well and Mulligan Stew is still looking for a publisher in a year, although I can't believe that a larger, better off house won't snap it up, try me again. All best, Harry White, editorial director.
Yep. It is so perfect. So I believe, I could be wrong. I think we're going to try and have Gil's son, Christopher Sorrentino, on at some point, and he might have some illuminating comments as to like the veracity of some of the things I'm going to say. But I think that these were like sort of close to true letters that he received. Like the names are changed and like they're exaggerated, but that they're not different than the form letters that we used to send out to people when you would reply in this way instead of just like rejecting things on Airtable or in Submittable. When you send these letters, it'd be like, "Well, this is really wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing this great piece of work with us. Unfortunately, due to the cost of printing and other complications with our list, we just don't have space for it this time. But come back and see us in a little bit. Like, keep us updated. Want to see your work. Love ya." It's there's so many of those. My favorite letter of these beginning ones, though, has to be that third one where it begins with I'm afraid my, quote, batting average at second guessing, quote, the boss is somewhat less than 1,000 right now. But I'll go out on a limb and risk telling you that it seems very doubtful that we can even consider taking it on, alas. Like every word is like
there's quotes everywhere, like little like air quotes.
It's so goddamn funny. 2 good letters, John K. managing editor. And I love there's like the letter from Gil at the end to his agent. He's like, "Are these fucking people even real? Like this name sounds like something out of my book. Like this doesn't seem like a real person at all." There is too, like one of the things that's fun is that and this became like a trope throughout a lot of like review contemporary fiction stuff. So in here becomes a bit of like Sorrentino's, his name is misspelled frequently, Sorrentos, or like it's always wrong. The guy's got it wrong. And then they refer to his earlier book, Imaginary Qualities of Actual Things, which is the real title, but it's like Imaginary Quantities of Things. Really wonderful book. Great book. Love that book. Like, it's like they're all like super wrong. Where's another one? Imaginary qualities and things, like they're all they just don't get anything right. And in the review contemporary fiction, the journal, John used to write these dear editor letters that were just made up voices of people writing into like the editor of this small publishing house about like their life ills and whatnot, and it would refer to the press wrong, the review contemporary fiction wrong, all the titles wrong. Like it was constantly like just screwing up with that, and I love it. That joke never gets old for me. Like, I don't know why, I just love it.
Now, maybe this is one, it's not for me, but maybe something that you've done or folks that listen to this podcast have done. Have you had to do a reader's report?
Oh, yeah. So I teach my students how to do reader's reports in my class, too. They're all going to be doing them on Delkey Books.
Give me the rundown on, like, what's a reader's report?
So the reader's report is the essential value. There's 2 values to it, but it's from when a book comes in the slush pile and you have someone read it and do a report in which they take I take a 3-part approach. The first one is very like first paragraph or so is very bibliographic and like factual in nature. Like this is the author, this is where they're from, this is the book, this is, you know, it's this long, it's about this topic. No, just no real description, just like general, big top line, undeniable facts. And then the second part is like a breakdown of the style. How is a book written? What, you know, what is the structure? What is the style like? What is this? Was that? And sort of like explains how the book works. And then that builds into a third part, which is like, we should review, we should publish this book, we should consider it, or we should just reject it. And so it has a function of like helping the editorial team to know which books to focus on out of the 100 submissions, which 5 do you read? And then also, like, if you do go on to publish it, some of that middle section can become your marketing copy. Like, you can start talking about the book and how to present the book and promote it via like what this person's first reader's report is. The reader's report in here follows basically none of the things that I'm going to tell my students what to do. It's not that. Instead, it's like as almost as poorly written as Antony Lamont's like bits. It's like, so it tries so hard. It tries so hard. But yeah, it's
well, I wonder, you know, I'm always kind of curious how things are made, and I'm wondering if this is like a really clever way of orienting us with like the plot and what's happening, because it would be very disorienting for a reader, and so they put in this crappy reader's report that it's like, hey, here's your map of what ride we're getting on. Have fun.
Exactly. I mean, it is super useful in that way. Like super useful.
Yeah.
Like, it even like gives you things to pay attention to. Like, it may be interesting to note that Lamont's fiction undergoes a title change from Guinea Red to Crocodile Tears. One must read this work to see exactly how important that change is. But let me say here that the odd ambiguity of the first title, ethnocentricity, come politics, come focus on economics, come the urge towards intoxication, acts as clue to those chapters written under it. Which is very funny. I don't know what Guinea Red has to do with politics, economics, or intoxication necessarily, but like that's for someone else to read. But the part that I think is really interesting in this reader's report, and that it does give you those bits. It explains like beyond the various data given us in the form of chapters, letters, etc. Sorrentino quite literally cracks open the world of Lamont's fiction, and indeed the world of all fiction, by giving Lamont's characters, particularly Halpin and Beaumont, lives outside the work that Lamont is writing. That is, Halpin and Beaumont are alive as people other than the Halpin and Beaumont Lamont creates. So he gives us that, you get that, but then you get the bottom. Finally, let me touch on the theme or themes. It's a brilliant case study of genius succumbing to paranoia as well as to schizophrenia. And then in parentheses, and this is the important part, as Lamont grows more unstable, his work takes on absolute aspects of many other writers, and sadly enough, most of them his inferiors, if we are to judge by his first felicitous chapters, which is such a weirdly gross misreading of those chapters that it's like, it brings up kind of like the Madame Bovary problem, where like Flaubert got this letter from this woman who's like, oh, you're such a genius. This is just my life is just like Madame Bovary, blah, blah. And he's like, you're a fucking moron. Like this, I'm making fun of this person. Like, how do you not see that? Like, you don't know how to read. And that kind of hints at that, because those first chapters are anything but like, good. They're so far away from like, I mean, I think the problem with talking about this book in some ways like that is that I think there's a lot of like MFA students who would be proud to have written this.
No, yeah, I know. It's when I teach introduction to creative writing, it has like every problem that I say, like, please don't do this.
Yeah. That's why I was curious, like, are there ones like, if you were to like have this first chapter handed in, like
well, there's too many. I just underlined one, like, the lake is speckled with little white caps flicked by the wind from the darkling Canadian forests. It's beautiful in an unearthly way. And I just wrote, oh wow, no. Like, that's so bad. I love it.
The jigsaw puzzle thing is the one that cracks me up every time, because it's just like he starts using it and he never stops using it for like the next 20 pages, and then it'll just go away. But like, I love the very beginning of like how it does like undercut the nature of writing. So how absurd is it is to find myself in this dilemma. It was I who made Ned Beaumont what he was. Anyone can tell you that. Perhaps not anyone. Why should I kill him?
No, it keeps doing these, like, rather than being exact, it does like, it second guesses itself constantly. Was it a sound? Alas, was it like little things like interrupting itself, and you know, like on page 2 or on page 2. They used to say, fresh as a daisy, they'll say I killed him. Perhaps I did. But why would I want to kill Ned Beaumont? You, Martin, Chuck, Halpern, killed Ned Beaumont, your business associate, didn't you? That's what the police will say. And what will I say? They're coming now. Because constantly the police are on their way. It keeps giving us this ticking
That's
clock.
gonna become just like that to spoil too, but that becomes a real bit of this book of like, well, I called them, but like, where are they? Why aren't they? How long does it take in this work of fiction for the police to arrive? Like, where are they coming from? Like, how does any of this function? Like,
no, this first chapter is like absolutely awesome and how bad he wrote it. And he did, you know, he does like the Patterson thing where it's about, you know, 2 pages long, like real quick. We have no attention span. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Perhaps and the jigsaw puzzle. I just wrote, oh God.
It's in there so many times because it's in there on like
Yeah.
the second page too. Perhaps the truth can then be seen emerging like the image in a jigsaw puzzle. And then when he writes his letter to Professor Roach, right after that first chapter, he's like, you know, I've always thought of the experimental novel here in America, at least, as a kind of elaborate jigsaw puzzle. It just keeps coming back as like the one metaphor we can use.
It hurts so bad because it's like, you know, it feels like stuff I would do myself on early drafts where you want to be clever and you want to put in, you know, extended metaphors that can, you know, when I was a boy, I remember I had a jigsaw puzzle that depicted a destroyer in action on the high seas. It was a beautiful ship, a can of the Horace Rosette class. I remember playing with the pieces, toying with them idly. Like, oh, I'm so happy with your verb there. Toying with the toy, toying with them idly, dropping them on the floor, trying to make them fit where they did not belong. Perhaps God or fate or whatever. Toys with us as I toyed with those multicolored pieces. It was a beautiful ship. That it was a destroyer now seems portentous.
So good.
Oh my God. It's so good.
When he rewrites Fall and Lucifer, he rewrites chapter 1, Fall and Lucifer's, he puts the jigsaw puzzle right into the very first paragraph. Like he writes that letter and then goes and is like, I need to rewrite that chapter. That wasn't quite right. And in the first chapter, I feel as if I am at rest in the hand of God, a fragment of the incomplete jigsaw puzzle that is my life.
Oh my God, it's so good, right? Yeah, because the end of the chapters where he really started leaning in and like, oh, now I'm writing. And so let's put that right up front now when we rewrite Fallen Lucifers. Oh my God.
The references to the women, that whole thing is wonderful. Like that, the sort of campy bad dialogue, which also feels like something out of a class where like he's like, you want a scotch? And Ned Beaumont always, I love that side note. I don't even know where it is. So he's like, maybe I'll use Ned Beaumont throughout and never say just Ned. But Ned Beaumont's
that's
like,
on page 10 on the old school version of it. It's like page 10 and 11 when they're talking about rocks and branch water.
yes.
And then later when Halpern starts having his diary, it's like, why is he making us talk like this? This whole thing with scotch and rocks.
Yeah, he's like, it says with branch, and he's like, I don't know what that possibly means. And there's like this awkward, like, wannabe waiting for Godot sort of conversation of like two people saying things that the other doesn't comprehend. But he's like, you want rocks? He's like, why would you say such a crazy thing? It's so stilted and like so poorly constructed. It's so wonderful.
And the images are brilliant, right? Clouds of blue cigarette smoke the bar produced as a volcano produces lava.
Blue. It's like lava.
It's like cliched and mixed, and it's like, oh, it's so good. Like
that's what like
anything.
That ending of the rewrite of chapter 1, which ends so picture then a brilliant, he's going to go back in time and explain like how they got to this murder, right? So picture then a brilliant afternoon in January, the sky is a faultless blue, and then like the next page is all about the sky was
blue, like the blue,
a faultless blue, that blue that has about it somewhere a touch of yellow, or perhaps pristine white, a subtlety that seems mixed with the pale azure that makes it perhaps even paler. The blue sky, flawless as it was, like it just rides the same thing for so long.
It's like trying to be Thomas Wolfe or something.
It's so funny.
I just got caught in a reverie and just caught the bug and had to write. What can I do?
And then I thought this is like such a good part of like both bad writing and just funny, where he's talking about the blue stuff again and Judaism, and he's like, the very flag of Israel is blue and white. Christ knows why. The Jewish stuff is wild, by the way, because there's
It's real. When he throws in all the Yiddish into
oh
his
my god.
with the oh my goodness, it's so funny.
We were talking about it last night because Kaya is working on a sample of a book that is about women doing stand-up comedy.
Mm.
And like there's presentation in this like 4-page sample of like a short comedic bit that one of the characters would give in front of like a director. And like how you write voice and humor is really hard, especially stand-up comedy is really hard. Coming from one culture to another is very weird. Others like raise a lot of questions. But like in relation to that, I went to like the section of whatever it is, nylon violet or rayon violet, where like he's trying to do this Yiddish voice that's just like having the question at the end, like,
it's so cringy. It's amazing.
So, I can't do it because I can't. It begs you to get into like the stereotypical sort of Jewish voice.
Yeah, it's like it's super grotesque. Like you want to take it to the edge, right?
Yeah. Have I got a cancer? She looks at me like this. Like it's like that sort of like is money everything? Better I should be happy than live like a sick prince. Like it's that constant like shrugging upend like question mark thing. And it's so I'm dying from the laughing already.
The one that I always get in my classes is people want to do crime. They want to do like a heist or a crime. And like everybody that's doing the heist is like, hey, Tony, forget about it. Hey, Vito, get over here. We got to get this safe open quick. The fucking cops are coming. Like, and they write it like that. You're just like, who are these people? What is this?
That's amazing. There is. I bring up the question, the way that works too. And like there's let's go back for 1 second. So that part, I mean, when he quotes his own books in here, they're so fucking terrible. Like I can't imagine they're so terrible that if these are real books, they would be like the worst books you've ever read.
Well, I love the stuff too when those letters to, is it Roche? Is Roche? Okay. But I love how serious writers talk about their work.
Oh God.
Right? It's so important and it's so monumental and oh alas, I must face the blank page. But like that. But then like talking about, well, I wanted to show the fractious nature of my character's interior intent. And I think I may have lost like their work is so important and what we're doing is, so smart. And so it's like, oh my God, you just can't roll your eyes hard enough.
I mean, related to that, like he's replying to the professor who's written him some sort of criticisms of Rayon Violet, and he says these two ones, which I love. 7, he's responding in numbered points, of course. 7, shamefully, I agree that Levenspiel is a wholly unrealized character, and that the Yiddish patois that I have put into his mouth is inexact burlesque. I must confess that the only reason that I put this character into the novel was because of a mad desire I had to cash in, God, what a vulgar phrase, on the Jewish novel that at the time was all the rage. It stands as the only time I succumbed to the urge for quick money. Shalom, my dear Roche. Shalom. 8, finally, let me defend myself against your charge that the formal structure of the novel is overly complex and self-defeating. You basically said my novel is bullshit. It's like terrible. Let me defend myself. But right before that, oh God.
Oh, like you finish your thought because mine's an aside. Go ahead.
This is an aside too.
Okay, then I'll do my aside first. Like another example, on the older copy, it's page 10. It's basically the second page of Fallen Lucifers.
Mm-hmm.
Where we have the dialogue between Ned Beaumont and Halprin. And it's, I don't know what it is about bad writing, but like the writers always tend to avoid just the said locution for a dialogue tag. So It says, a drink, Ned Beaumont, I said. That would hit the old spot, he barked. What would you like? I mumbled. I have everything here. Vodka, bourbon, gin. Scotch would be nice, he sighed, with a splash of branch. What is branch, Ned Beaumont? I inquired pleasantly. Branch is a kind of swell, pure water, Ned Beaumont whined. Like, and then in other words, it's replied, it's chortled, sputtered.
Yep.
And one of them, he does dialogue, and he grinned, like he grinned the dialogue instead of said the dialogue. Like, and it's just on, and like it's really hard to write like
whispered. This. Oh my God, I didn't even notice how many there are. I cried.
It's all of them. The first
You're
one
right.
is said, and then every other one after that is something other than said. It's incredible.
Yeah, smiled, suggested. Wow, it's so incredible. I intoned.
He began. I intoned. I replied, and yeah. Oh my gosh, it's wonderfully bad.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
The thing I was thinking is like in his scrapbook where he gets this letter that's the writer's helper monthly that someone's like, here's our thing. We're going to help, impress you got to work your imagination. So we're going to send you a series of questions and answers that will help like expand your way of thinking. And then it's just a series of like the questions at this point are like, is it true what they say about Dixie? Who is Sylvia? Is that the Chattanooga Choo Choo? It's like those answers are the ones. I was like, if God be with us, who could be against us? New York Yankees.
New York Yankees.
Oh my God, it's so fun.
All right, and the one thing that we definitely have to at least like pick one or two things from is the list of books and periodicals that are inside of this imagined world.
Yep. So Helpin. I don't know how you're supposed to say his name exactly, but I always want to put in an R that's not there. But he goes around. They're like stuck in this house. He and Ned Beaumont. Ned Beaumont is dead the entire time that he's being written. Like Helpin's like, fucker is gonna leave me here. Like, and then what's gonna happen? Like Lamont's gonna come back and there's not gonna be a dead body because Ned's gonna be gone. And all he does is be dad. Like he doesn't do anything. And then I have to say this terrible dialogue, and it's so crappy. And they're looking around and they're like, there's nothing, there's only part of the house. Like he hasn't described the rest of the house. It doesn't exist. But they have a room filled with like books, like, and all these books are listed. And the first one is The Orange Dress by Sheila Henry, who is Lamont's sister. And is a character, I believe, from Imaginary Qualities of Actual Things. Sheila Henry shows up in other Sorrentino books as like a character, so he's pulling in from his own. And also within that same list, The Dry Ranges by Guilford Sorrento, sort of like The Sky Changes by Gilbert Sorrentino. Like there's like those echoes, but the list is like, I mean, every one of these is crazy. Like I couldn't come up with 4 titles, but this goes on for 4 pages, and then the just of titles of books, and then there's the periodicals, and that goes on for like 3 pages, and those are crazy too. Synthetic Box Weekly, Humming Crafts, The Mediocre Teacher, Snooker News. Like, I no, it's just like boundless. So, what are some of your favorite ones?
I mean, you could just pick them at random.
You
like
really
it's
can.
Jack Off in the Old Red Barn by Ricky Dickey.
My favorite is
What?
Sexual Fulfillment in the Woods by Birch Humper.
Yeah. The Cry of Serbo-Croats by Boris. The last name he puts on that. Holy cow.
10 Days to a Hairless Body by Alice Gunn. Yes, We Have No Bananas by, quote, Sister Veronica.
How to Hit 212 by Clinton Hondo.
That's so fast. What the Vice President Eats.
This is Sexism at the Battle of Waterloo by Jilly.
New York is Really Swell by Ronald Paloma.
Yeah. Oh man.
Oh my God. Masturbate Those Pounds Away by Weary Riley.
Tie Your Own Tubes by V.A. Schlitzmagen.
Call Me Gay, Call Me Faye by Biggs Richard.
Yeah, these are
come up with all
these are completely out of control.
Texas League Times, Babes and Boobs, Infantry Frolics. It's so good.
Golf Your Way to Sexual Fulfillment.
This one, these 2 back to no, these 3 Oh God, you could just go, but just randomly here's some of the periodicals. Lil Bugger, Early American Croc Studies, Titorama, Kapop. What a fucking wonderfully manic book. Absolutely. But yeah, so in these questions and answers too, there's that part, but then there's an interview with Thomas McCoy, who gets referenced later as an author that Lamont reads. And this is the beginning, like there's like weird, I think this is the book that has references to Latvia in it as well, but there's a lot of like poking at Belgium, which is very random and funny too. But that's great. And this interview that's just inside here.
Wait, we missed one. Fire Pale by Vladimir Papillon.
There we go. Yeah, there's so many Nabokov references, and I know that John told me that Sorrentino hated Nabokov. Like he didn't like his books at all. They were too like.
I could tell there was a little bit of disdain in the way he's writing in it, but I didn't know if that was from the actual author or the author of what's inside of here. But,
I think he like, especially with the Lolita Pale Fire ones, that they're just intentionally, tricksy and set up that way to be like sort of tongue in cheek or like.
Well, this one too. I'm really curious what this one means. Jesus Christ, A History of Fort Hood by Bert Sonnertino.
That's great,
right? Because I don't know what Gilbert Sorrentino's relationship with Fort Hood is or anything, but that one's curious.
That one is, yeah.
That'd be good. I don't know his history at all, but that'd be a neat one to know.
And this is where, so in that interview is where Thomas McCoy is talking. He's like, so also.
Oh wait, one more. Holy shit! Yes. How we missed one? The Velvet Trench.
Oh my God.
By Joy Cumming. Oh my God. It's like everything has like it's so like sexual, like just drenched in sexuality, right? But
yes, I'm right. This is the book that I remember that has a well, these are so great. Lesbianism in Western Ireland, 1886 through 1891 by Olive D'Oyly and Carr. But then
hold on, A Skeleton Key to Rabbit Run by Oh Christ. Oh wow.
Philosophical History of the Geography of Latvia by Daniel Deaver. Like, why the Latvian references in here are just so random.
Oh, there's a T.R. McCoy book in here as well.
Yeah.
Turtles and Cocktails or something like that. Or Cocktails and Turtle Soup by T.R. McCoy. So, interesting. Yeah, this is just the commitment to lean into these jokes is wow.
It's just so much like I can imagine the foundation of the Bulgarian Diplomatic Corps, 1945 to 1949 by Olga Warner. Like there's some that are just so like that could be a book. That could easily just be a book, but like it's wonderful. Like I mean, it's like explosively wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. So in the chat with the real McCoy, Thomas McCoy, he has some great bits. He's also, as a writer, like super pretentious and like coming from like a very privileged place. And his like answers and questions are so funny. Like, what literary complexities do you find the most interesting? That is, what do you like to solve, so to speak, as a novelist? Answer: one wishes to create characters who will speak directly to the minds of comparative literature professors and intelligent book reviewers. It is so pompous. And this is where like also is the question. Then you do not approve of Nabokov? Answer: does one approve or disapprove of Zane Grey? But Nabokov pops up over and over and over again. And just fun. And this one too has the like Spanish, that barbarous language. Like there's so many funny like little jabs and like strange things in here. But then you reference this, like the CV. So Roche asked Lamont to send him a CV apparently. And instead of doing that, because he doesn't agree with like the structure of that, he just writes a little bio that's like unbelievable. Like, I was born in Graystar, Washington in 1925. It was a poor town, dependent upon the sugar beet crop for its well-being and prosperity. My mother was a devoted churchgoer, intimately involved with the local church's choir, a strawberry festival, a Thanksgiving poor basket gala, and all the rest. But then my favorite is the third paragraph. My military career was spent in downtown St. Louis.
With our guns pointed at the buildings.
His guns were set up on towers in one of the city parks. Oh,
My mother read to me from the Bible, Treasure Island, Pilgrim's Progress, Growing Up Straight and Sound, Scales and Feathers, Modern Business English. Modern Business English?
I only recently discovered that Bolivia is not part of Eastern Europe. Oh my god. And then we get that, and then we get the third chapter in which Painful digests, which is great too, because they're having lunch. So Halpern and Ned Beaumont meet for lunch. And
but the setup for that was so good because he's writing to his sister, right? Was it to his sister or was it to Roche? Oh, here, to Roche. Please let me know what you think. I'm going to have a bite of lunch now and then get on with GR. My two heroes will then have their lunch in what I hope will be a pivotal chapter in terms of their relationship with each other. I have what I must use in my mulchy notebooks already. Now to put it together! Exclamation points. This pivotal chapter.
It's like Antony Lamont, like this book works so well too because like if this were written nowadays, like he would just be tweeting. Like he would just be like the worst.
Hashtag am writing. No, that's why it gives me like so many of these vibes of like Charlie Kaufman when he has his alter ego trying to try to adapt the book. It has like there's like I feel like he must have read this and was aping on it when he wrote that screenplay.
There is going back, so that cover that as you hold up because you have the older one that looks like it's made in MS Paint has a lot of words in the background, and then this thing. I kind of think that that's the perfect cover for when that version of the book came out. Like that was reissued in the 90s, right? Like it was like 95. Is that right? Seeing if it's in here, 96. So yeah, so 96, yeah. And that as like a sort of like mulligan stew, which is just everything thrown into a pot sort of deal, is all those things kind of just thrown together there, and it fits like what things would have been in 1996 for sort of pastiche style. So it's kind of like it's ugly as shit now and looks so dated and so weird, but like all of our stuff looks so dated back then. That would have like
I love this cover. It's like perfect. Like it hits perfect for because this has like a leather texture to it. This has a paper texture look to it, and then it's every color with the wrong amount of color and saturation, and it's all tilted in different ways. It's well, let's use this typeface for the M and this one for the U, and this one will be slightly transparent. And it's just like, oh my god, what
how many options exist in MS Paint? Let's use them all. Why stop at one?
If you're old enough, remember when PowerPoints first came out and you would use every transition possible between pages? It would be star white, page red, like just, all right, okay.
There were 12, so I used all 12. Like
every possible animation for every slide. That was every PowerPoint we ever had when our teachers first had them or we were presenting. Oh man, it's terrible.
It's so good. So good. Yeah, so the last part that we have is the third chapter in which they meet for their lunch, and Ned Beaumont speaks in nonsense words and cannot really get anything out. And they have like the worst waiter that's been there forever. What is his name? Ugo? Like says crazy shit too. Yeah, Ugo Lambui or Lambois, who knows? Where here he is like, I don't even know how he says. Lords, he boomed again, a quieter boom this time, something like a mortar round hitting a mess hall. Here with my right and my left ear, strange mouth noises, expressions of chaotic import I gather in the eyes from this table, from your esteemed clutch of dew. Therefore, I reckon it ain't out of my line to ply you with verb and cheer, gentlemen's. Is the pen that does not the palate's sparkling zip, not the salt lost its savor, is perhaps a lively cucaracha disporting the loathsome frame upon the greens? Speak to me, monsieurs, or sacre bleu and poussant carambas must rend my spirit. It's like such a hodgepodge of fucking nonsense. Like it's like so incredible. And then this is a reference for the actual plot of this is that Ned Beaumont is like, letters, letters. He intoned whiningly, make you understand some of it. Home, come home, see letters. I signaled Ugo for the check. He arrived at the table with a custom celerity. So the letters are going to be a thing. That is part of like his plot of his actual mystery novel, quote unquote, are a series of letters. So I'd like to, what else? I don't know if you want to say anything else about that right now, but I want to bring up something like that's totally random, but slots into this kind of well, is that right after this, within an hour, I'll be on the local NPR station, WXXI on Connections. If anyone wants to tune in, just WXXI Rochester, listen live, because this is what we're talking about. I got this email last night, and so I have had time to think about it, but I've given it next to no thought. We keep hearing about how AI is already able to write books and poetry and make art, and maybe eventually it will supplant the artist. It has me thinking, me being the host of this show that I'm going to be on. We can all name great books, but most are more than a decade old. But I'm sure there are still great books being written by real human beings. I want to know, what's the best book written in the past decade? What's a book that will be remembered and read and known in the way that so many classics are known? And what's a book that might not earn that status but should? That's our topic, which I have so many questions. Like, I don't know. I don't know. But I think like it's the thing that's interesting is like, one, like great books like within the past decade, that's absurd to me, because everything like has to last longer than that to be great. Like it's tough to navigate those waters. And at the same time, I'm doing this podcast talking about Mulligan Stew, which I think is a great book and can be deciphered that way. And then after this Connection show, I have to do another podcast. I'll be out tomorrow as well, or next week, that's on John Barth and Sotweed Factor, which is another amazing, great book that fits into this. So it's kind of at odds. But the thing that I was thinking about in relation to the podcast, in relation to this, is that we lack a structure now of literary criticism, in which like those things can become great, because things become great in part because of their being able to be like discussed and analyzed and broken down. And this book sort of fits that in the way that like Delkey had the review of contemporary fiction to kind of dissect and introduce and promote through intellectual vigor various difficult books and difficult authors who then had great books and were great, like JR is part of this, Gaddis, like that sort of thing, where they weren't necessarily the most popular authors, but are great authors. And they're great because there's someone that can champion and help make them, known and understood in that way. Whereas I feel like when we're talking about this issue, and this is, I'm going to have to put this on the show, on the radio, but is like, I think all we're going to end up talking about are like, what books do you really like that came out the past 10 years, which is not the same thing as what makes a book great. And what makes great books last isn't like, well, I really liked, John Green. I can guarantee that this thing's going to be 99% YA bullshit, but like, it's going to, I don't know how we can talk about great books now in a world in which like the infrastructure of the analysis and teaching and concrete criticism is like so lacking.
Well, like, I don't know, go back to the VR thing, or no, AI, sorry.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about Lawnmower Man a lot lately. It's a really important film.
Key piece of American cinema.
Yeah. No, to go back to AI, like, well, sure, like AI can make stuff, but I don't know, like, I think what great art does is it tells you what you need, and it tells you what you should be reading or watching or thinking about. And I don't think that AI is close to doing that yet. I think it can ape and it can parrot things that have come before, but I don't think it can forecast where we are going. And that's what I think a great piece of art does, and that's what a great piece of literature does. And you can't know that within a couple of years, because like sometimes it can't be appreciated until there's a little bit more time, and it's like, oh wow, this is really showing us a path forward.
And it's most likely not going to be popular.
Yeah, and it won't be very.
True, but
probably won't be popular.
I can't think.
Like you could say like George Saunders is great or whatever, but is that going to be like some like lasting piece of literature that you're going to want to read 100 years from now? Like I don't know.
I don't know either. That he's the one that keeps coming up on this, is like Would I include him? I don't honestly don't know.
So I was trying to think of like what were really good books that I really like French Exit by Patrick DeWitt, but it's not really important or anything. It's just really well done. And it's
And,
like, oh, this is delightful. It's wonderful.
and
Now
I guess
Ferrante, I think we can get behind Ferrante though.
Frante's my lock for sure. That book will, because it will be discussed and taught this way forever. Like,
You could bring up like remember we talked about Sarah Mesa 4x4. Like
I
to me
know.
that's important. That's like doing something and it's saying something and it's well written and
Yeah,
it's accessible. Like to me that's a really great piece of writing
I have that
and
down too.
and it's contemporary. I think but then you're like kind of like you're being like that person that's out in left field doing this. Oh, you've never heard of this person, but check this one. Or like no one wants to hear that because they don't know what it is.
Yeah, yeah.
They want George Saunders and Ferrante and you know
The
stuff.
other book that I think can be included in that is like Duck's Newburyport. And I think one of the things that I keep coming back to is that, like, for a book to be great, it has to be able to withstand this sort of like, it has to be able to be part of this podcast. Like, if you
Sure.
can't talk about it in that, is it great literature if it's not like worthy of being discussed at length?
No, it should be the sci-fi writer Ted Chiang because they're making his stories into movies. And if you make
Right.
it into a movie, that's when you know it's good, right?
That's essentially like this is like I went through a very funny. I found my favorite to pick on. I found a LitHub list of the best books of the 2010s.
Oh God. Yeah.
I mean,
Hit me with a couple. Hit me with a
thank
couple. Come on.
God that it exists because it's like it's so unhinged that I love it.
Like the Idiot. Like people like the Idiot, but that's not going to be an important book, right?
Yeah, so here's some of theirs. I mean they're basically like for the most part it's unobjectionable. It's just like, oh yeah, that's a book that came out in the 2010s. Cool. I wasn't even thinking of that. But then it gets to the bottom and it has like the also rans, like the honorable mention, but the honorable mention is like 400 books. It's like literally like every book that you could think
Just
of.
everything that was published.
Some of them are repeated. It's like it's amazing because it's like it's just a testament to like how they put together these lists of just like hodgepodge of nonsense and like highlight a few things. But
There by Tommy Orange.
that's on there. That is
There you
definitely
go.
on there. Station 11, which is a terrible book. There's some that are on there that are like real bad. But for the most part, it's just like non-objectionable. But anyways, so wrapping this up, is there anything else with this first section that you want to bring up?
No, this book it's like low hanging fruit, but it reminds me a lot like the energy, the smartness, the quality of the writing, and what it's doing. It reminds me a lot of JR.
Yeah, yeah.
Where it's like I could see people will love it or they'll hate it, and if you love it, you're really gonna love it, and if you don't get it and don't want to get it, you're really gonna hate it. But I think we're in for a really fun ride. I can't wait to get through this.
Oh God, it just every day is gonna be something new and something. Next to that part with Ugo, I just wrote, "Wow, what an accent," which is kind of all you can say. I'm looking for a good line, and the first one that came up here, which isn't necessarily my favorite, but ties into what I just said, where it says, "However, I despise kohlrabi and the sickeningly fruity wines of Belgium." Like Belgium gets like takes it over and over again.
Maybe something I want to maybe consider for next week's talk, or maybe in the future at some point. It made me think about when you were talking about Kaya and the women in comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Would this be received the same if it was written by a woman instead of a man?
Yeah.
And would we like the style? Would people think it's so clever, or would it be? I'm curious if there's like a sexist perception, because I was thinking about like something like JR or something like this, or even like the way like Duck's Newburyport was like with so long and so stylized. Do we have, we mean like the collective like readership, and primarily male readership, is there a bias with women writing things like this versus men writing things like this? I think that'd be interesting to think about.
That's very true. Very true. You have a favorite line that you want to throw out there?
Well, since it was written by a man, I do actually, but no. I think I've shared plenty. I think I'll just pick a my favorite line: "American Lake Poetry" by George Stardust. There you go.
The one that had me cracking up last night. It's not even necessarily that super funny, but when Helpin's like explaining what's going on, he's like, I was just an old gardener, and that was fine. And now, like, what the fuck is all this? And then he says, the crowning humiliation was that absurd dialogue Beaumont and I were forced to carry on about branch water and rocks. Afterward, Beaumont sat at the table and hid his face in his hands, ashamed to look at me. I just can't stop laughing. And, like, this character just be like, motherfucker. Like, I can't, like, what?
You don't know what he makes me do at night.
Like,
It's always night.
It's always stormy over that sea. It's so good. So trying to figure out where we go to for next week. The two editions that exist, I initially had the wrong numbers. I was looking at the wrong thing when I was trying to put this together. So I've updated on the website the correct reading schedule for the two versions. For the new version for next week, we go up through page 148. And in your version and the Grove one, you go up to page 124.
Perfect. Alrighty.
So, yeah. So for anyone listening, that's where you go to for next week. We get more about the Corey and Bertha, your sex mistresses. So time for some good old erotica fun next week. Be there. And in the meantime, rate, review, like us, do all that kind of thing. Share with your friends. Help us out. You love it. We're really bad at the promotion part of this. Bye.
Bye. We're hitting 212 with that.